Hello and welcome to All Geeks Aside. I'm your host Teddy, and this is the podcast where I will take you on an in-universe history of a character or group of characters from comic books, manga, computer games, TV and movies, anything at all, and not just a character. I might even do a object from comic books just to see. Now, if any of you listeners, and even my friends who do listen to my show, I think, have suggestions for future shows, you can tell me over on my social media, and I can be found on Instagram, Facebook, and even on Twitter, and it's All Geeks Aside on all platforms. Alternatively, if you don't want to contact me through social media, you can email me. My email is allgeeksaside@gmail.com, and I will leave that in the show notes for anyone who can't understand what I'm saying. Now, on a note of people who actually do like what I'm doing and you would like to support me further and continue me doing this, I've affiliated with TeePublic. And what TeePublic does is they produce t-shirts for me, and all you have to do is go and order it from their site. And they have long sleeve t-shirts, short sleeve t-shirts, they have kids shirts, onesies even, I think. They also do stickers, mugs, and phone cases, oddly enough. And I have ordered from their site, and I must say that the quality is actually exceptional. So if you want to check it out, go ahead. I will leave a link in the show notes. And also, each week I will be adding shirts that I curate from artists that are on the site currently, and I will be adding them to my store so that you can purchase them and you can help some artists that I think their work is actually pretty nice. And also, I do want to thank some of my podcast friends who have helped me along this journey. And that would be the Breakers podcast, Just a Worse podcast, the Sofa King podcast, and in the very beginning, before I really got started, there was those conspiracy guys. They're fellow Irishmen, and they helped me a lot. And I know they don't need any plugs, neither do any of the other podcasts that I've mentioned, but I'm still going to mention them because they have helped me in the past. And as I mentioned earlier, people have suggested characters, as in the last episode and this episode were suggested by some of my listeners, and this one was requested by my friend Bill Smith. Now, he is an actual friend of mine. He became a friend through my Sofa King group, so I'm giving him his props for asking me to do this one, and I hope he understands that this is a crazy history that he asked me to do, and it is pretty good. But the reason that I was excited to do this one was basically because of who it is. Now, the character, or characters actually, I'm going to be covering in this one are Captain Marvel and Black Adam. And Captain Marvel resonates with a lot of people because of the fact that he is really a child, but he can turn into a superhero. And as a kid, you would have seen this and you would have gone, oh, maybe that could happen to me. Oh, and since writing this, and I forgot about this, I have signed up for Patreon. Now, I'm not asking any of you that are listening to this to go over and check it out, because it's not 100% yet. It will be probably by the end of today. But if you would like to go and check it out, I'm going to be leaving different rewards on there. If there's the $10 reward, which is probably the most daunting, I will be giving you a sheet of the notes that I am reading off of right now. I'll also be giving shout-outs on my show for people that do actually finally add themselves to my Patreon, which may or may not happen. And also, I have changed podcast host. I'm now a proud member of the Podbean family, and if you can't find me on anywhere, I am on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and now Podbean. So, with that being said, let's get into Shazam, or is it Captain Marvel? Because he was known as that in the beginning, and now he's Shazam. So, let us first talk about Captain Marvel's powers and the facts that surround him. Shazam is unlike most heroes, as he does not have a secret identity like Batman or Superman. When Shazam is not all suited up, he's a mere boy. He's Billy Batson. So let us talk about his name. Well, it's not actually Shazam. That's the magic word that Billy must speak in order for him to change into Captain Marvel. Due to some publication mumbo-jumbo, he is now known as Shazam. But his name is the initials of the gods that his powers are bestowed upon him, and that's where it comes from. So you have S, which is the genius of Solomon. You have H, the strength of Hercules. You have A, the unbreakable will of Atlas. You have Z, the lightning bolts of Zeus. You have A again, the power of Achilles, and then you have M, the speed of Mercury. But what does actually all this mean in equatable powers that me or you can really understand? So let's break it down. So S, the untold knowledge of Solomon. With this, he has photogenic memory. He can know everything that has ever been known by him or any of his predecessors. And this also comes in handy when he has to read or speak ancient dead languages or even hieroglyphs. He is also somewhat of a human supercomputer because he can solve complex equations in his head very, very easily. Now H. H is the power of the demigod Hercules or Heracles, depending on who we're talking to. And this is his superhuman strength. He is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, character in the DC universe. And he's on par with that of like Superman, Wonder Woman, and anyone else that has similar power. He's even as powerful as Darkseid. Now we have A. And A is the stamina of Atlas. Now Atlas is the Greek god or Titan who holds up the earth. And Atlas has done it since time immemorial. But in this case, for Shazam, it's his imperviousness to harm. He's near invulnerable. Now Z. Z is the power of Zeus. Now what's Zeus's power? Zeus's power, in theory, is lightning. And it's not just the lightning. The lightning is the magic that gives Shazam, or Captain Marvel, his power to transform from the young child Billy Batson into Captain Marvel. But as a bonus to all of this, it also makes him immune to magical attacks. Then he can use the lightning as a weapon. Now A is the courage of Achilles, and it grants him the courage of the Greek hero. But combined with that of the child mind of Billy Batson, he kind of sees himself as unstoppable. And sometimes this is a fault of him, and he runs in and attacks without thinking. But it also protects him from mental attacks. Now M, the speed of Mercury. This is an odd one because in the beginning, Captain Marvel could move at the speed of light, and he would do so when he was traveling to the Rock of Eternity, where his powers originate. But now in the newer DC universe, he can go around Mach 10ish, maybe a little bit faster. He is as fast as Superman, which is fine. So how does an orphan Billy Batson come to have the powers of a god? Well, let's delve into his history and see where it takes us, and see where the young Billy Batson really gets his powers. So in walks Billy, who at the time he gets his powers, he's 12, maybe 14, and he is unfortunately an orphan after his parents died of a tragic case of murder on an archaeological dig in Egypt. And all of this will become clear soon when we get to tie in everyone together. And that's at least one telling of his parents' death and what happens. This is the one I like. So his parents do die, but Billy doesn't see him, so therefore he doesn't really become Batman, but he does become a superhero eventually. And I'm telling this as I recall it, and it's the one that I prefer, so bear with me. If it's not the one you know and you want to comment on it, you can send me an email. And Billy is living in an abandoned section of the subway deep beneath Fawcett City, Fawcett City is a fictional city in the United States. It's kind of close to Gotham and Metropolis, I think. Now, during this, he also sold newspapers on the corner. It's very 1940s, I will say that. But one night, when Billy was trying to keep warm, a stranger who resembled Billy's dad came up to him and convinced Billy to follow him deep into the subway. Now, when Billy did this, he goes through turnstiles and all this, and he is met with a marvelous train that is painted bright red and yellow, and it's covered in ruins and glyphs and of a language long forgotten. And the train and its two riders are whisked off to another station, seemingly deep within the earth. On one side, when Billy gets out, like he is told, literally, get out, and he's now standing on a platform, and he looks forward. On one side, he sees 7 statues, and these 7 statues are the 7 deadly sins of man, and they would be envy, greed, gluttony, lust, wrath, pride, and sloth. But in front of Billy stood a throne, and on top of the throne sat an old wizard, an old man, to him at this point. He hasn't declared himself a wizard. But he does declare himself as the ancient wizard Shazam. And he has protected humankind and mankind for thousands of years. But is now a victim of the perils of aging, and he's getting too old to do it anymore. But above the wizard Shazam, suspended as if by magic by a single thread, is a giant granite block. And the wizard tells Billy that he has been selected as his new champion, his new protector of the humans, and he will become the strongest and mightiest man in the world. He will become Captain Marvel. The wizard orders him to speak his name, and he will be transformed. And as I said earlier, it is the acronym for the Heroes of the Ages. And with the utterance of the wizard's name, Billy is struck by a magical bolt of lightning, and he is transformed into the adult superhero Captain Marvel, aka Shazam. Now, as Captain Marvel, he is somewhat of a different personality, but mostly he is Billy Batson. He does remember things kind of differently than what he does at the time. But when he turns back into Billy Batson, he remembers everything as Captain Marvel. Now, as soon as Captain Marvel becomes Captain Marvel and he realizes what he is, the giant rock of granite that is suspended above the wizard falls, killing the wizard Shazam. But before he died, he did tell him that if you ever need me, all you gotta do is light this lantern that is right beside me, and I will come back. Now, I know that this is only one of the origin stories that is out there. There is another, and it is usually slightly different, and I will get into some of it later. But Captain Marvel would then become a member of the newly formed Justice Society of America, which included a host of heroes, including but not limited to Dr. Faith, Black Canary, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, Red Tornado, and Wonder Woman. But there was one other that would make an appearance, and he would be Black Adam. Now, he and Captain Marvel are intrinsically linked, so without explaining him, I wouldn't be able to continue this story because of the fact that they both argue a lot and fight a lot throughout this whole thing. So, the source of both Captain Marvel and Black Adam's powers are one and the same. Yes, they are the wizard Shazam. But, however, at the time of Black Adam, the wizard Shazam was a high priest to the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II in and around 1200 BC. And at this point, the wizard was also old. So he is old in the present day, and he's also old 1200 and 3000 years ago. So, what does he do? Well, the wizard Shazam found the young prince Tet Adam, and he believed him to be fair and just, and chose him to be the new champion. But there is, however, a little spanner thrown in the works, and that would be by none other than the wizard's own daughter, and his daughter's name was Blaze. And Blaze went and she made a deal with the Egyptian god Seth. And now, when Tet Adam said the wizard's name Shazam, he was not drawing his power from the wizard, but from the Egyptian gods, who ironically spelt the name Shazam. And those names of the gods would be Shu, Heru, Amon, Sahuti, Aton, and Mahan. Now, Tet Adam would then go on and he would serve Egypt, and he would do so for many years. So the wizard Shazam did not have a champion of his own, but the world did have a champion. And his duties did make him leave his family in his homeland of Kandak. While Tet Adam was away from his homeland, an evil priest known as Acton, he decided that he's going to invade his homeland and lay waste to the whole thing. And in the incursion, Adam's family was killed by Acton. The priest, unfortunately, was powered by the Orb of Ra and protected by it, so that with the wizard Shazam and Black Adam could not intervene. So instead of touching him, which he couldn't, he decided that he would entomb Acton's family as retribution for him killing his family. So, with no ties to his homeland anymore, Adam returns in service of Ramses' court, where he did serve Egypt for many years. And he served alongside someone that will come up later. He served along their champion, and his name was Naboo. Now, I'm pretty sure there might be someone listening to this that knows who it is. If you do, I'm not going to reveal it. You can email me, or you can contact me on Twitter, and I would be glad to retweet whatever you respond. Now, still his service kept him away from his new wife, because he is now immortal in Black Adam's state, and he did remarry, and he has a new wife, and her name is Shiruta, and he also has 2 sons, and their names are Gon and Harut. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't speak ancient Egyptian. Now, Adam's homeland is once again destroyed by Acton, and this time Adam did nothing. He just let him go. He said, right, that's it, I'm done. No, he is still in service to Ramses' court. And now there is a prince who has come along, and his name is Prince Khufu, and he would later become Hawkman. Now, at some time during all of this, Adam is met with 3 strangers claiming to be from the future, and they were Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific, and none other than Captain Marvel. Now, Adam felt relieved that the legacy of Shazam's power would continue in Captain Marvel, and he is very, very appreciative of what Captain Marvel is now and what he was, because at the time Black Adam wasn't evil, or was he? So with the help of the 3 strangers from the future and that of Naboo, Adam was finally able to capture Acton, and evil would creep in to Adam's heart, and he killed the priest Acton for all of his transgressions through his past. Now after this, Adam would leave the court of Ramses and return to his homeland of Kandak, and he proceeded to overthrow the government that was in place at the time and placed himself as ruler. The wizard Shazam sees all of this and fears that Adam has been corrupted by his daughter Blaze. The wizard sealed Adam's powers into a scarab. Now Adam's body was hundreds of years old, and he was an old, ragged corpse. He decides that he's going to bury the body of Black Adam, or Tet Adam at the time, and the scarab in the tomb of Ramses II. Now here is where the pair are linked. It is Billy Batson's parents who discovered Ramses II's burial chamber in the now present, but it is Adam's descendant who would kill Billy's parents and release the original powers of Black Adam. Now when first Black Adam is released, and he and Captain Marvel meet, the pair do end up duking it out, and Shazam uses his magic to take Black Adam's voice away. Black Adam would eventually get his voice back, but he did spend some time in space reflecting on everything, because at the time when he released himself first, he was still evil. But he goes into space, he does some reflecting, I guess, and he would return and he would join the Justice Society of America. And this is where we tie back into everything that we're just talking about. Now, you see, this is why Captain Marvel ends up joining the Justice Society of America. It is so that he can keep an eye on Black Adam. So in the course of Black Adam being a member of the Justice Society of America, he eventually does leave, and he wants to go to free his homeland from its totalitarian rule. But in the process of him freeing his homeland, he would be set as the new prophet. You see, the inhabitants of his homeland Kandak are mostly Sunni Muslims. Now this is kind of touching a bit of a sore spot for most people right now, and they do place Adam as the prophet on a similar level to that of Muhammad. Now I don't want any Muslim people attacking me for me saying this. This is just, I'm recording history of a comic book. But the Muslims that Adam is dealing with are slightly different. They're not as crazy on rules as most Muslims. They are a little bit more liberal, and they do allow certain things that not every Muslim person that I can make out do. So, during Captain Marvel's time at the Justice Society of America, this is going to get even stranger. He does date a one Courtney Whitmore, and she is also known as Stargirl. And this is seen as controversial because Captain Marvel looks like an adult on the outside, but he's not really. He is really a 12 or 14-year-old boy. Him and Courtney are similar age, technically, but it is the Flash, now Jay Garrick, not Barry Allen that most of you know. This is very, very old school. He confronts Captain Marvel about this whole situation. And he tells him that it is wrong, you can't do that, you're an adult, you can't date a child. Instead of revealing to Jay Garrick, the Flash, who he really is, he decides that he's just going to leave the Justice Society of America. Next we have Infinite Crisis. Now, what is Infinite Crisis, I hear you asking, because this is not something that I have covered in any of my shows. This is where a Superboy from one of the original Earths of the multiverse decides to punch a hole through the wall of reality so that he can get back to his original Earth, which was destroyed when the Anti-Monitor decides to eat all of the Earths and then poop out one Earth. But there is some remnants left behind, and Superboy is one of those remnants. Now, when he does this, he punches his hole into the wall of reality, and it creates ripples. And the ripples cause stuff on the now one Earth to become like they were originally on all of the Earths, which there was hundreds of at the time. It was very, very confusing. But after all of this that happens, there is now 52 Earths. Now the Marvel family, and that would be Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, and Captain Marvel Jr., but there's also one other character who introduced himself into the Marvel family, and that would be Uncle Marvel. Now Uncle Marvel didn't really have any powers at all, and Mary Marvel realizes this, and she just says, okay, you can come along, you can be on the family with us, you don't have anyone else. And he complains that he can't fly, and sometimes he invents himself a rocket pack so that he can try and fly, but that's kind of odd, in my opinion. But it is when the Spectre, who was tasked by Lex Luthor, or Alexander Luthor, I can't remember which, but I know it's one of the two. He tasks the Spectre to take out all the magic-wielding heroes. So the Spectre goes and he decides that he's going to take on the wizard Shazam. Now the two have a cosmic battle of immense proportions. And this causes the wizard Shazam to be destroyed completely. And also, the Rock of Eternity is destroyed, and it splits and is sent flying into all of the dimensions that have been created. But also in the process, it frees so many ancient evils and magics that have been locked into the Rock of Eternity for eons, and now they're free to wreak complete havoc on everything. Now after all these events, Captain Marvel, the Marvel family, they help with the sorceress Zatanna to recapture the 7 deadly sins that have escaped, which I mentioned earlier, and put them back onto the Rock of Eternity, which they also in tow do rebuild. But the wizard Shazam is no more, so who's going to be its protector, its caretaker? Well, Captain Marvel sets in and he decides that he is going to be the new protector of the Rock of Eternity. And because of this, it brings a strain on Captain Marvel, because now he's in control of untold magic that he wasn't before, and he is brought close to insanity, and he starts talking to the 7 deadly sin statues that are there. So Captain Marvel is no longer the protector, and he needs a protector to help him protect mankind. So Marvel turns to Black Adam. He grants Black Adam permission to turn his friend, or girlfriend at the time, Adriana Tomaz, and he gives her the power of the Egyptian goddess Isis, not the Isis that attacked everyone. Okay. Now, Black Adam would later marry Isis in his homeland of Kandak, and the ceremony was presided over by Captain Marvel himself. Now, Black Adam is trying to prove himself that he is no longer an evil person, that he is good, and since Captain Marvel is now the protector of the Rock of Eternity, he sanctions Black Adam to create his own team, and he creates the Black Marvel family, consisting of his wife Isis and her brother Osiris, all ancient Egyptian gods, like they are all powered by. Now, Osiris did have a friend who almost became the unofficial mascot of the Black Marvel family, And he was named Sobek because he was similar to the ancient Egyptian deity that he just looked like an ancient Egyptian deity. And Sobek was a human crocodile hybrid. So Sobek is a crocodile man, but he would never leave Osiris' side. He was always very, very quiet. But it is months later when the true nature of Sobek is revealed. Now, Sobek was created, and the reason he was created was that he was created to be Yord the Unknown, or the horseman famine of the biblical 4 horsemen. It happens when he releases his powers, and when his powers are released, it brings a great blight across all of Kandak. And suddenly a massive hunger comes across Sobek, and it's insatiable. And he betrays his friend Osiris, and he bites him clear in half. Now Isis at the time was trying to stop this blight from spreading across all of her beautiful homeland, and in the process she soon dies. When Black Adam finally discovers that his wife Isis and her brother Osiris were killed by Sobek, he flew in, and in a fit of pure rage, he kills Sobek in a truly barbaric fashion. He grabs his jaw and hyperextends it, ripping it clean off. And then, as you would with a crocodile, he decides to turn his hide into a pair of boots. Now, this whole ordeal would cause Black Adam to lose his mind completely and turn completely to the dark side. And he takes it out on the entire world. But first he must try and track down at least one of the horsemen. And he tracks down Death. Now, Death is in the nation of Bialia, which is also a fictional nation in the DC universe. And it is resided over by Queen Bee, and they are very, very secretive, kind of like Wakanda in the Marvel universe. And he took his revenge out on the entire country, killing every man, woman, and child that was there. Now, this would make Death strong enough, you would think, because that's where Death's power comes from, is by people dying. And Death himself thinks that he is certainly powerful enough that he can take on Black Adam. And he's wrong. And Black Adam does kill him. Now, this, along with him killing millions and millions of people, caused Captain Marvel to step in. So, Captain Marvel called a parley with the ancient Egyptian gods, and he petitions to them to remove Black Adam's powers. But these gods refuse because they are ancient Egyptian, and they actually even go so far as condone what he did. These gods are kind of badasses. They're a little bit of jerks, but they're ancient gods, and if anyone knows anything about ancient gods, they were always, kill in my name. And this is where Marvel decides that he's going to reach out to the other mystics in the DC universe, and it is the sorceress Zatanna who would answer the call. Now, Captain Marvel confronts Black Adam, and speaking the magic word Shazam, he cancels out Black Adam's powers by channeling the very, very lightning that gives him his powers through Black Adam. Now, this causes Black Adam to revert to his mortal state of Tet Adam. And because of Zatanna's help, Black Adam is no longer linked to the word Shazam. Now, Tet Adam does escape, and he's nowhere to be found. But he was last seen wandering the streets of Kandak and its capital city of Shiruta. If you remember, that's Black Adam's wife's name. And I assume that he is still trying to figure out the word that is linked to his body. Now, Tet Adam is desperate to regain his powers, so he decides that he's going to break into the tomb where his wife Isis is kept, and he grabs the remains, and some of his followers end up being killed in the process. And he tries to find the Lazarus Pit. Now, what's the Lazarus Pit? Well, the Lazarus Pit is a thing where if you put a dead body in, it will be brought back to life. But also, if you're alive and you go into the Lazarus Pit, it will prolong your life, because Lazarus is the immortal man, as I recall from biblical history. So he brings the remains of his wife, Isis, to the Lazarus Pit and puts her in. And he does bring her back to life, but he does see that she's not the same. She's just a reanimated corpse. She's not his wife anymore. So in process, he decides that he's just going to kill Isis. Go figure. So he decides that that's it. He knows that he has to try and get his powers back. So he takes the body of Isis and he goes in search of the Tower of Faith. Now, the Tower of Faith is where his old friend Naboo should be. As I said earlier, if you know who Naboo is, let me know, and I might do an episode on him because he's one of my favorites. I actually thought about getting him tattooed on me. That's how favorite he is. But Naboo is not at the Tower of Fate. It is instead one Felix Faust. Now, Felix Faust is an ancient sorcerer. He is thousands of years old, and he was trapped in the Tower of Fate by a dying Ralph Dibny, who was Plastic Man. He was literally on The Flash recently. Now, Faust teams up with Black Adam so that Faust himself can be freed, and Faust uses his magic to transfer any residual magic of Shazam, the wizard Shazam, from Isis back into Black Adam, and Black Adam does get his powers back. Now, here is where things get a little bit strange. Captain Marvel Jr. and Mary Marvel are both left powerless through the trials of Shazam, which is a whole thing that's not really important, but that's the important part. But the important thing that does happen through this whole thing is that the Black Adam gives the now powerless Mary Batson, who is Billy Batson's sister and Mary Marvel, he gives her his black powers. And this changes the once innocent Mary into a villainous, crazed lunatic. And he wanted Mary to do him one favor. He wanted him to tell Billy that he was sorry. Now Black Adam is once again powerless. But with the now dark Mary and the powerless Black Adam, the pair head to the Rock of Eternity, where Captain Marvel resides, and he is watching over everyone. Now, using his spellbook, since Black Adam has no powers anymore, he sends the lightning to Captain Marvel that changes him into Shazam, and he steals Captain Marvel's powers and banishes him back to his home, Fawcett City. Now, the young Billy Batson does go and contact the Justice Society, who, with the help of Billy, they tackle now fully powered Black Adam and a dark Mary Marvel. Now, Billy is taken captive by the dark Mary Marvel, who shares her powers with him like he once did with her. So that's how she gets her powers. They touch fingers, lightning crosses. When he says Shazam, she becomes Mary Marvel. And this causes Billy to become evil and dark, just as he was. Now, the four then join forces and fight the Justice Society. But when Isis reveals her plans to eradicate all of humanity and destroy the civilization as a whole, go figure, it's Isis, Black Adam decides to help the Justice Society's Flash, as well as the resurrected spiritual form of Billy and Mary's dad, to bring back the wizard Shazam from the underworld. Now, Black Adam then gives his powers up in order to bring the wizard's statue, which came back. She didn't come back in corporeal form, he came back as a statue. He decides to give up his powers and relinquish it to the wizard Shazam. Now, once the wizard Shazam comes back, he takes all of his powers that Billy and Mary have, and now Billy and Mary are powerless and they're homeless again, but at least now they have each other. Now we have a portion of history that I really, really like in the DC world, and that's the Flashpoint. Now, Flashpoint, if nobody knows, is where Barry Allen the Flash decides that he's going to go back using the Speed Force, go back in time, and save his mom from being killed by the Reverse Flash, and as a result, a butterfly effect screws up everything. And one of the things that happens is that with Captain Marvel. Now, Captain Marvel is no longer Captain Marvel. Now he's known as Captain Thunder. Now, basically, he is still Captain Marvel, but he's slightly different. Instead of being Billy Batson, now there is 6 children who are required to speak the word Shazam and become Captain Thunder. And the 6 children are Billy Batson, Mary Batson, Freddie Freeman, and those 3 are the original Marvel family. Now, the 3 other ones are Eugene Cho, Pedro Pena, Darla Dudley. Now, with these 6 combined, they have to utter the word Shazam, and they become Shazam. Now, all of this will become irrelevant once the Flash puts everything back to normal. But nothing was normal after this. Now we have no longer a Captain Marvel. We have Shazam. This is in the present day-ish right now. But Billy's own personality as a whole has actually changed. He's no longer the good-natured kid that he was in the past. He has grown up. He just wants to grow up. He wants to become an adult as quickly as possible. And he is still an orphan in an orphanage in Philadelphia at this time with the Vasquez family. And he is adopted. And he starts to go to school. And later he is walking the streets and he does see a mugging, and he says Shazam, and he becomes Shazam. And now Shazam's story does continue, since we haven't actually spoken about the Justice League, but I'm going to leave it here. That's a history of the Wizard Shazam, Black Adam, and Captain Marvel, all enclosed in one. And if you want to read any more of his history, because his story is truly fascinating to me, because of the fact that it's purely magic. Now, if there's anything you have any questions on of any of this, if you want to request anyone at all from me to cover, you can hit me up on Twitter, and I'm at allgeeksaside, or you can email me at allgeeksaside, and I will gladly contact you. Now, what I'm going to do is, since I have started my Patreon, I'm going to now discuss what Superman and Captain Marvel's fight would really be like. Now, I know I've seen it in movies, mostly animated movies. Yes, I do watch animated movies. I am slightly a child at these things. But I'm going to go over to my Patreon account, and I'm going to add what I think would be a good rendition of him, because of the fact that I'm having a blast creating this show, and I'm sharing with you the love of everything that I do. It's a lot of research, so the next portion is going to be a 15-minute, maybe less, of Superman and Captain Marvel fighting. So if you also like this and you want to hear more on this, go over to my Patreon page and support the show. I don't need a lot. It's less than the price of an actual comic book in general. And you can help me, and we can continue this together. Right. That's it. Head on over to Patreon. I'm Teddy. Thank you very much.